And let's make sure our tests are in good shape. Okay. So Latoya, since you weren't here this morning, just a quick rundown. I pushed. Okay, let's. Implement, compare password, add test for new user. Okay. Come on. Okay. So we completed our encrypt password function and our compare password functions, and then we added a test to check that the password was encrypted properly. And I actually want to add that just in case people want to come back to this, we also, so this is, so we also discussed testing functions that return promises, and why and how easy it is to get false positives. Okay. Part 2. 10:15 to noon. Okay, so we should be able to make some good progress here. Okay. So let's look at, I think we're ready to move on to another action. So let's look at our notes and whiteboard. Okay, so we created a new user. So now we need to get user data for a profile page, including all the user's posts and all the cities that the user has posted about. Okay. We need to check the user password for authentication. So we already, oh, no. We did that right. So we don't have an actual function that given a user and a password will check it for authentication. Like given an email and a password, we'll check to see whether it's okay. And then we need to be able to update the user. And I think I'm going to, actually, let's go here. I think I'm going to save that for later. Save the update user for later. Okay, so what do you think? We have a choice here. We can get more into detail on the user stuff, or we can do a create new post, and and we can just sort of like do the low-hanging fruit on posts and cities. What do you think? Which path would you like to take? Complete users all now, or do some low-hanging fruit on posts and cities? Let's complete users. Okay, does anybody else have any opinions? Yeah, I agree. Okay. Yeah, but remember our database, if we see our test database, don't forget it makes a user, it creates a user, and then it creates a city, and then it creates a post with that city and user, and then it creates a comment, right? So we've taken care of as far as testing goes, we've taken care of having data in the database. That's okay. It was many days ago. All right, so let's go back to user actions. Oh, that's our test. Okay, so we were going to make a different file for every user action. So right now we have add user. Let's go back to our whiteboard. All right, so we have add user. What other actions should we make? Login user, or I'm going to say touch check user login. Okay, what else? Yeah, we're saving that one for later. I'll do a get user data as well. Delete. We didn't even have that. Can we, is delete user part of our specs?
I'm just gonna do like an admin one.
Yeah, so this update user, I'm going to save that for later. I'm going to deal with that later. I don't feel like dealing with that now. That one's going to be complicated.
What about like their posts?
That's part of the get user data. So the get user data is going to include all of the user posts and all of the cities that the user has posted about. Okay. Okay. Let's do check user login. That one seems easier than getting user data. Absolutely no response. So I'm going to say, go ahead. All right. Okay, so what do I have to do? Big blank file. This is just a file in the actions directory. Let's see, so here I am, so I need to go up one directory and then into DB and db.js. Okay.
And is that where your bcrypt lies? No.
Yeah, good question. No, that's not where my bcrypt lies. So I'm going to have to import those other things too. In my utilities password.js, I'm going to have to, so const compare password. I just happen to remember that's what we called it. So now we have compare password. Okay, so let's export. And actually, let's see, did I, in add user, let's be consistent. Yeah, here I just exported the function itself and not the, and not like an object containing the function. So we'll do the same thing here. So, okay, cool. All right, so what is check user password going to need? It's going to definitely need the password.
So we're just checking if it's in the database or if it's correct.
Yeah, we're checking if it's correct. So let's actually, yeah, so I think we're gonna want an email here as well. I think we're gonna want an email and a password, and we're gonna check to see whether that's in the database. What should we return from this function?
The entry.
The entry. What do you mean by that?
I would want to return like the user and password.
Yeah, and I actually think I want to return. It's going to return a promise because we're dealing with PG promise, right? And so, and the promise resolves to object representing user row. What do I mean by the user row? All the information for that user. Okay. And so okay. Have you all been using JSDoc?
No. I did on like one project. You have to install it?
Not on VS Code. Are you using Atom? Yeah, install. Well, you don't have to install it. You could just type all this out yourself. Yeah. But if you install Doc Blocker, then you can do the /** tab, and it will. Yeah. Yeah, right. It's just like installing a package, and that's it. You don't have to. It's just Doc Blocker, not. Okay. I highly recommend it. In Python, it's really considered that your function is not complete unless it has a doc string, which is sort of the equivalent of this. Don't do it on the interview.
Yeah, but still, it's like,
Go for quality over quantity.
well, quality learning. Quantity of code.
All right. Just do remember that everything that's up on your GitHub profile is fodder for potential employers. You do not want to have anything up on your GitHub that you would not be proud to represent as your code. That means JSDoc on everything.
And all your code should be in Python.
That too. Yeah. Okay. Should I, yeah, so I'm actually going to go harped using JSDoc. Okay. Okay. So, all right, let's, so now check user password. So this is pretty easy. Let's just return compare password email. No. We don't just get to do this because compare password. Okay. Function F12. It shows me where it is defined. Yeah, function F12. Okay, so it needs a raw password and a hashed password. So here, actually, my parameter names are very helpful in addition to my JS code.
Yeah, I like that because normally the second one would be salt round versus hash password.
Oh. Yeah.
So in this case, the first one would just be the first parameter would be password, and then the second one would be like user.password, whatever you have in your
Yeah, so we have to find it from the database, right? So now I actually think that we should make a get by email action for the user, because that's something we're going to want to do a lot. So let's go back here and we'll touch get user by email.
Shouldn't that just be part of your check user password to return the
It could, but we're going to want to use this get user by email both in this function, in this file, and in get user data. So I might as well just throw that.
I was just thinking that you have to log in to
Right,
the site,
right.
so wouldn't you get all the user data at that
Oh, and you're thinking you maybe store it in your session? Is that what you're?
Well, yeah, I guess maybe that's. I didn't think that far. I just thought like you'd have, if you would just save database calls like certain ones.
Yes.
But maybe it's storing it all in those sessions.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. What do we care about more? Do we care about saving database calls, or do we care about having a bulky session? Right? Probably if you wanted an application that scaled well, you would want to err on the side of bulky session as opposed to database calls, because in general, like database IO is a bottleneck. And memory is somewhat cheap, and that's what bulky session would be, is storing a lot of stuff in memory. So we can let's think about that as well. Right now we haven't even gotten to the session yet, so let's we might refactor later. Okay, and so okay, so shall we do some red-green testing on this? Let's do it. Okay, so we're going to return db.1 because we just want one, right? And I'm going to do some red-green testing. I'm just going to do select now, right? I'm just going to put a sort of a dummy query in there. It's a query that returns something, but certainly not the user. Okay. So email is a string. And this is all a little verbose, probably unnecessary. And it returns a promise. I haven't decided whether I want to capitalize that or not. So promise resolving to what? What kind of promise should this return? Okay, cool. So now let's go back to this user actions and let's make another describe. Okay. And now it puts the lotion in the basket. Okay, so before we definitely want to have the before each, which resets the database. And that reset the database will also, it'll put a certain user in the database. So let's look at the DB reset and see, okay, so it's putting testy test, test at test, and the password is just called it plain text, and the city is Oakland. But really, actually, we want to encrypt this password before putting it in the database. So now I need to update. I need to update my seed to put an encrypted password in the database.
So how do you do that?
How do I do that?
You know, like, because if you put just like a normal string of numbers, then that's not going to do the same thing.
I know. So,
Is there a way that we can hash it?
oh, what might that look like? Or I also could
Because you already defined those functions elsewhere.
So we're going to go up from utilities and then up from test. So, and then into source and into utilities and then password. I haven't figured out in VS Code how to like click on this and like actually open that file, which you should be able to do. I can totally find it, right? I'm going to take a brief detour because I've been meaning to do this anyway, and open, so let's do VS Code, open file from require. Let's just see what that does. I don't know. No. Okay, I'm not finding it quickly here. I do want to look it up though, because I'm really like, it's something that I've found that I want to do a lot, and yeah, it's something that I want to, you know, and I don't want to have to, even though this is relatively easy. Okay, compare password. Just wanted to make sure that I was, oh, no, that's not the one that I was interested in. Encrypt password, not hash password. Okay, so now down here, I can say, oh, but I can't do that unless I'm using like await, because encrypt password returns a promise. So how am I going to do that?
It doesn't actually matter though, since this is just a test, right?
Well, it does, because in this test, this get user by email. Yeah, it's gonna give me. I want this to give me a hashed password. I don't want this to give me a plain text password. I want this to sort of represent what I would actually get after having added a user.
But if you put, it's just going to take out whatever the password field is in the database.
Right.
So if you're expecting plain text or whatever.
I don't want to expect something different in my tests. In real life.
But that's okay. Maybe I don't understand. I thought that's what this was going to put in there.
What I want to do is I want to say encrypt password. See how nice VS Code is? It like tells me exactly what's going on here. And where do you think it gets this information, that this is supposed to be a string and that it returns a promise? My JSDoc? Yeah. Okay. So we'll do this, and we'll do dot then hashed password. So, and the user params now, I'm going to say user params dot password equals hashed password. And then, so now instead of that plain text password, I'm actually going to, in this create user query, this password now is going to come from, it's going to come from the hashed password. Is that too much? Is that too confusing?
It just looks like you're still putting in the plain text password.
I'm not though. So here, okay, so encrypt password is going to, not sure why you're so upset, but encrypt password is going to return a promise that resolves to the hash password. So then I'm going to take this user params, which I have mostly defined out here, and I'm going to add on to that the key password is going to resolve, or is going to, or the property password is going to be connected to this new hashed password. Then when I do the create user query, remember I'm using named parameters instead of numbered parameters. You remember that? So instead of doing like $1, $2. So, and so now it's going to take whatever the password property is of my named parameters, which I have put as my hashed password. We good? Okay. So where were we? Aha. Okay, so get user by email. We were at this test and I wanted to see what was going on. So now, so we just want to reset the database. And then we want to get user by email. And we want to get the email that we put in our seed file. So we want to get the email that we expect to be in the database, which at this point is test@test.test. Because once we ran that reset DB, it should have seeded that test user in there. Yes? Okay. I'm thinking about this though. What exactly do I want to test here? Let's take a step back. What exactly do I want to test here?
If it returns the user you're expecting it to return? Yeah, it's like if the email is valid and
Okay. So, but I think I want to do, yeah, I think I want to do, so the question is, how thoroughly do I want to test this? Do I want to test that it gives me absolutely everything that I'm expecting?
like every entry in the row?
Yeah.
No, because we shouldn't have duplicates.
Well, but the question is like, maybe I do I want to check, so I maybe want to check that I get all of the properties that I'm expecting, right? So maybe I want to check that I get all the properties that I'm expecting, right? For the resolved object. So maybe let's do we'll do an it returns an object with the expected properties. What do I mean by the expected properties? Person, the object that I return. And if we look at this get user by email, function F12, no definition found because I'm not actually requiring it. Okay. What's your problem now? Oh, this has to be. Linters can be really useful. Okay. That's all I get. Okay. So get user by email. So here, this is supposed to return a promise resolving to an object representing a user row. So I just want to make sure that I get all the information about that user that I'm expecting. I want to make sure that I have all the keys there that I'm expecting. I probably want a key that's email, a key that's user ID, a key that's hashed password, a key that's primary city, right? And a key that whatever is image URL. Whatever my user actually, and joined at. So I want all of those keys. Yeah, do you think I should change that?
I know that I got feedback from Rachel, and she was saying that you keep it as password. I had it as a password, but she was like, you keep it as password because in the real world, all passwords are going to be encrypted. So, but then I hear different stuff from other people saying that you should use what type of password is it. So I think maybe passwords.
Sounds good. Is it at programmer discretion? Engineers are very opinionated, and engineers have a lot of different opinions. Yeah.
There's no like convention for.
Not that I'm aware of. Good. Okay. So do not have Kelcey on your team. That's the. Okay. All right. Good. So let's go back to my test file. And it returns an object with the expected properties. And I think I want to do another test. And my other test, and this is why I was sort of hesitating here, I actually think that for my before each, I just want to reset the DB because because here, this is a success case when the user exists. I also want to test that it does what I want in sort of the non-success case. So it returns, what should we say? Should it be an empty object? Should it be null? Yeah, I'm going to say null when the user does not exist. And we just want to make sure that there are no errors when the user does not exist. We want to make sure that, that it does what it's supposed to do. And I like null better than undefined because undefined is what it returns by default and null is something explicit. So here we'll say .then expect .then user row. And we're going to have some sort of expect in there. And we'll have to think about how to test that it has the expected properties. And then here, return null when the user does not exist. So we'll do a get user. We'll do the same thing. But here, I'm just going to say expect userRow to be null. Line 43. Do I? Yeah. Okay. No, good thing to check for. And in fact, like the fact that it's like unhappy about this means that something's wrong. Something's not right.
For each, yeah, there's an extra 38.
And I think I want to say like that. Okay. So we're going to expect this user row to be null. Fine. And then here, what ideas do you have about how to check that it has the expected property?
Yeah, you can check the keys or like.
Okay, how would we do that? What do you think, Kelcey? Includes. Okay, so then I would have to do one test for each property, right?
Well, but there's, I think there's
You
like
can
an
test the
object.
length.
What's that? Oh, wait, okay, wait. I'll let Kelcey and then Brittany.
I think there's one that checks like all the. I don't know what it's called. But it's like.
So you think there's an actual thing that that checks all the properties?
Yeah, or you can just give the object you expect. And it matches, and it's like deepEqual. I don't know.
Okay, well, we'll think about that. Brittany, we could check the length.
Yeah.
Why do I not love that?
Well, because you're not actually checking the expected properties.
Yeah.
Amount of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say something similar, basically just to see what the not null, but like you said, anything could be in there.
Right. By the way, when I say I don't love that, like, so, you know, my niece who's 2, I was trying to get her to sing some stuff on a video, and I was like, sing Blackbird. She said, "Mama doesn't love Blackbird," because apparently her mother doesn't like Blackbird, but that's how they express it in their family. I don't love that.
I don't love that.
Yeah.
Outright
Oh,
Yeah.
Crazy that.
Yeah. Okay. So, right now I'm thinking about that video where she's adorable. So, all right. But let's actually check and see. What are we going to Google to see how to check properties of an object in Chai? Okay. It's not Mocha though. It's Chai. So that's important. What's the difference? Why is it Chai and not Mocha?
Because Chai is expect.
Yeah, because Chai is our assertion library. And I'm going to say
Mocha is a testing framework.
Mocha is a testing framework. Mocha helps us with things like before each and it, and runs the it and tells us whether or not an exception was thrown to let us know whether or not the test passed.
But the expect statements are Chai.
The expect statements are Chai.
What's Chai called?
It's an assertion library. So yeah, so expect comes from Chai. Where is describe coming from? Where is that defined?
Mocha.
But I didn't import it up here. I didn't require it. So where's it coming from?
It's a dependency.
It's not. Well, dependency is, it's when when I run Mocha. So let's just go back here, since basically these sessions are Bonnie expounds about code. So
Mocha's like no, you don't.
yeah. So when I run this Mocha here, then I have those it and describe defined. If I did this, if I noted one of those test files, let's actually do that. So my user actions, I don't even know if it's, I think it's in a, yeah, it's in generally a syntax okay state. So if I, so now if I do node user actions, it's like describe is not defined.
Oh, but if you mocha.
But if I mocha user actions, then it'll do stuff. Uh-oh, we did something bad because we got passing tests and unhandled promise rejection warnings, which means we forgot to return something. Good.
Yeah, on all of them.
Let's try again. Ah, good. So we wanted to get an assertion error there. This one, we don't have any assertions in yet, so yeah, no exceptions were thrown. It passed, fine. Okay, but that's where the describe and it come from. It's when you run mocha. Mocha populates those global variables. And that's why, by the way, code is having a fit, right? Because these really aren't defined. I have to change my settings so that it doesn't do that, but I don't, I haven't gotten around to that yet. Okay, back to, all right, try object properties. Chain property assertions on object. To have property and to have property. Ah, interesting.
Oh. You have to write that for each property.
And should have property. Okay. Fix wrong property chaining examples. Dang, check that out. I don't know what that is, but it looks great. Okay. So now all I want is chai property chaining example, right? Now that I know such a thing exists. Well, I mean, I saw it's to have property. Right, so we can expect userRow to have property email, but I want, can I say and to have, that's what they were sort of implying.
Yeah.
Property password. Can I do that? Let's see if we get some sort of syntax error there. Okay, so it does have a property now. So I'm curious if I change this to now, will it give me an error still because it doesn't have the property password? You with me on what I'm doing? I just want to check this chaining. Yeah, I mean, like, so now it does have a property now. I'm just taking what was actually returned from my fake query. And I just want to see whether I get an assertion error that it doesn't have a property password, just to make sure this chaining is working the way I expect. If it has one, am I still going to get an error if it doesn't have the other? And I do. So fantastic.
So chaining works.
So chaining works. Okay. Okay, so what else do we need it to have? Email, password created at, we want to have an ID. Let's, all right, so ID, sorry, joined at, name,
Primary city.
I think it was image URL. Okay. User image URL. That's a dumb name. Let's just say image user URL. Okay. Cool. So let's run our npm test again. Okay, so now we have 2 red tests that we want to turn green. That's good, because remember, we do want to make sure that our tests will fail so we don't get false positives, which up here, you know, we got those false positives when we expected them to fail, so we knew something was wrong. So now that we've got these tests failing, we're in good shape to make them pass. Okay, and so now let's go to get user by email, and instead of select now, let's do a query, and the query will be select star from users where email equals, and should we just do $1 here rather than doing the clever object or named parameters thing?
What is the benefit of named parameters over
The benefit of named parameters is when you have a query where that's taking yeah, so if I had a query, this is more this is easier for me to figure out how to get the data in than a $1, $2, $3, where then I'd have to like look back and figure out, and you know, and so forth. Yeah. Whereas this other one, this get user by, I mean, when there's just one, you know, it's really not that big a deal. And I want to do a dot catch here. I want a console error, the error, and if there's a dot catch, do I just want to return null? What do I want to do? Sensing very little interest in this question. Thinking about what? Okay.
What's the question again?
If I get an error, do I want to return null?
No.
db.1 is going to give me an error if I don't find something. Maybe I want to say 1 or none.
But why would you want to return null?
Well, because I would have gotten an error if I just had db.1, it would have thrown an error if nothing was there.
Right.
And I said that I wanted a null if nothing was there.
Oh, I see.
now I'm not sure what it's going to return. I'm actually not sure what one or what none gives you if there's a none, but our tests will tell us. So let's run our tests. Okay. So first of all, it seems to have returned a string rather than an object. That's a bummer. And then here, it returned an object. It actually returned what I expected. What I expected on this one. Okay, well that's interesting. Let's tackle those one at a time. So here, this one, I'm getting user by email, and I'm doing test at test, and it thinks that my user row is test at test, right? That's what I'm getting from this traceback, because it's expecting user row to have property password, and why is it complaining about the password and not email? Oh, is it then taking, oh, I think and to have might be, this chaining might actually be taking whatever the value of this property is, because it didn't complain about the first one.
Can you scroll down a little bit to the next one? Because maybe.
Oh, yeah. So I think my chaining is not working right. Okay, so it now passed the return null when user doesn't exist. So that's awesome. So one or none actually does return null when it's none. So huzzah. And then, okay, and then it returns, all right, so this expected properties is not working out that well for me, the chaining. I have some other ideas. I know how I've done it in the past, but I have a feeling people are tired because I'm getting sort of lack of engagement. Are people tired?
Starting to overdose on that.
Okay, short break?
Short break, stretch break.
Okay, back here at 11:20? Okay. Okay, so I'm going to say my expected user row is going to be email, password, geez Louise. Okay, so we're going to have to do check, or X, what did I call it? Oh, we only have compare password. What did I call the one where I actually encode? Did I say encode password? Encrypt. I knew it had a Y in there. Some weird. Okay, thank you. Encrypt password. This is me on not enough sleep. So we're gonna have to do encrypt password, because that's the password that we used in our seed. Dot then return or first of all, I'm nesting dot thens, which should never do. So let's, this is fancy. Okay, so we're going to encrypt password. And then I'm going to do this let up here so that I can use the different outputs of different promises in subsequent promise.then functions. So I'm going to let expected results, expected user row.
Like a scope thing.
Yeah, so because if I defined it in this dot then, I would either have to nest dot thens, which is just not what I want to be doing, or I'd have to nest dot thens. So so now I'm just gonna say hashed password expected user row equals, okay, password, email is test@test.com. Oh, see, but this is why I just wanted to look at the thing, because I don't know what joined@at is, right?
Oh.
Yeah. So
You're gonna have to have everything. It's like
Just the keys.
I'm gonna, okay. Okay. I am going to, so let me tell you the way that I dealt with this in my own personal project, which I'm not sure is the best way to deal with it, but this is what I did. In my own personal project, I used sets. You can't compare arrays unless they have the same order. I didn't care about the order of the properties in the object. I just cared what they were. And a set is kind of like a bag of something. In this case, it would be a bag of strings. And I want to see, does this bag of strings have the same contents as this bag of strings? Monica.
Question about how you're testing. So you're testing to see that the properties exist on like the result you get back from the database.
Yeah.
Is there a reason that you're testing the properties and not testing the exact the object exactly?
Yeah. Can you guys explain why I switched from testing the object exactly? Has anybody been paying any attention?
No, totally. What?
No. Why is, I want to know why Bonnie's testing properties on the object she's expecting to get back from the database instead of testing that the object she's getting back equals exactly and deep equals exactly an object that she's like constructing on.
Because Kelcey, you remember?
No, I don't. I missed that. I missed that like second that you said that. I think that's the only thing I missed.
No,
Okay.
because we don't know what it's going to return.
Yeah, like each time.
Each time.
But in the test, we should be being explicit, right, about what we would expect it to return. Like if we are getting a test user's email, then we should only be getting the same object every time.
Yeah, like if you're using that particular email address, then you should be capturing that person in the one way.
Exactly. And so I'm wondering, since the test is
Why did I stop creating this expected user row?
Because of the issue you had with
Because, yeah, like we don't know when they joined.
yeah, like,
We don't know what the value of joined@at is going to be. And honestly, I don't give a shit what their hashed password is, right? I'm testing that in other places. And so I'm adding a bunch of complexity here, especially like the joined@at, I'm just screwed, right?
But she's saying in your test database, you know the joined@at.
I don't.
You do because you created it.
Right, but where do I have it stored? What, except by actually querying the database and seeing what the joined at is. And then it's like, does the joined at in the database equal the joined at in the database?
So in other circumstances, like you were doing this, and then that's not going to work because of the joined at. So in other circumstances, you might do that. In this particular circumstance and some others.
Yeah, I mean, I just, like, at this point, I don't really care, right? I could, so if I wanted to go this route, I could continue doing this. I could also, in my DB reset, I could explicitly say what the joined at is and not rely on the default. Okay, should we do it the Monica way?
I typically try to.
You typically do it the Monica way?
I
How internally consistent? Okay, let's do it the Monica way. We're going to do it the Monica way, and then we're going to move on to something else because, like, I think your brains are full / you've totally lost interest in this. So,
Can we talk about fetch credentials?
yeah. Okay, so let's, should we do this the Monica way later? Are we, like, so done with this we don't even want to look at doing it the Monica way?
I think we're just maxing the capacity in our brains right now. Like, it's all just going to up a gear. Okay.
Thank you for your consideration.
It's all starting to blur.
Nobody's paying any attention to me, frankly. So, to do object deep equal based on seed data. Okay, so I'm making that as a note. Let's go to the README. And I harped on using JSDoc. What else did we do? We did TDD on get user by email. So let's. Right, so we started to create get user data. Realized we needed get user by email, right? So we actually kind of went, like, we branched a little bit. We started with get user data, and we realized we needed to get user email, and then we got mired in get user email.
Forgot the line that says refuse to use includes. For some reason.
Or maybe Kelcey will read and show us how.
It includes, yeah, so includes is kind of like deepEqual, but just for particular properties and values.
Yeah.
And I mean, so has property is something that if I was just looking at the properties, like I would want to expect to have property. But for all of the properties, I can either use a set, or I can, we'll resume tomorrow by doing deepEqual using known user row. This will involve giving user fixed joined at data. And I also want to export user data from DB reset. So code is dry and there's less chance for discrepancies, right? Already already what I'm doing is in my test file, I'm actually typing out test@test.com rather than using something exported from my test data in the DB reset file. So if I'm going to be like giving it a fixed joined at date, I don't want to have to like put that fixed joined at date both in the DB reset in my seed and also in my test. I just want that to exist in one place and then just compare later. So anyway, that's just a little roadmap for myself.
So you can get the test file to
Say that again.
No, never mind.
I'm just going to export it from my reset file and import it, or I could make a special file that only has that data. That's the other option. It definitely has to go through the hashed password for sure. Yeah. Okay. So let's look what. So again, I often do a git log to remember what my last commit was. So implemented compare password. Okay, so what does WIP mean? Why am I putting it there?
Wait, because you're currently working on it. You haven't done it.
Because I don't want people to expect this commit. I'm committing because I'm stopping and not because I finished something. And I don't want people to expect this commit. Yeah, I don't want people to expect this commit to have working code. So basically WIP is this code does not work. That's essentially what it means. Forget user by email. Okay. Okay, so for the next half hour, I know that Brittany wants credentials. We could also do something completely different, and I could like talk about runtime or something, you know, more interview-y.
Like whatever you think would be best for the exam.
Let's look at pictures of cats.